Morning everyone, it's Seren Dayal here, the CEO of Magia. But today I'm speaking to you as an angel investor, and this really goes out to all the startups that I'm involved with and any entrepreneur really who's looking to make a difference in the world. So I'm just going to share with you my thoughts on how to pitch. And I've seen a lot of pitches, some of which I've invested in, some of which I haven't. So this just distills that thinking. The PowerPoint template that I'm using here is available publicly, but I've also posted it onto LinkedIn, so if anyone wants to use it, they can grab it. Okay, let's start at the beginning. So obviously you need some sort of company name, ideally one or two taglines that reflect the core of what it is that you're doing. The next thing is I like to look and see, well, what does success look like? So if you achieve whatever it is that you're setting out to do with the invention or the company, what would that look like? And a little bit about the business. The first thing you have to describe is, well, what's the problem that you're trying to fix? And it could be anything really. For me personally, I like to see that you're solving some societal problem, but it doesn't have to be that way. The main thing is that there is a business problem out there that your invention, idea, technology can help with, and it can do that in a differentiated way. So it could be anything from how people feed themselves, to environmental issues, to social issues, to solving some problem in the banking world. Then clearly you need to have a solution. So you frame the problem, and you need to be able to describe, well, how is whatever it is that you're doing, that you're asking for the investment in, is going to address that particular problem. There's lots of new technologies coming out. I do see a lot of pitches based around consumer data, a lot of pitches based around harnessing the value of IoT. Obviously AI is pretty flavor of the month at the moment. So just be aware that whatever you're pitching, there's a bunch of people out there who may have similar ideas. Where there's a product, and I tend to invest in product-based companies, then you need to be able to describe the product. And in particular, for me, why is it unique? What's different about it? What's in sort of startup speak, what's the unfair advantage that you bring? Now you can get there just by being first to market, but it's much stronger if there's some unique IP or some insight that you have that can be captured, patented, protected, that'll give you a much stronger position for asking for money. What's the main benefit of that product? So emphasize whatever the main thing is that your product can do that nobody else in the world can do. And it may have a whole bunch of other side benefits, but focus on the one that's differentiated. Clearly, you're talking to people who ideally will want a return on investment. Some investors are philanthropic. I'm a little bit more like that. We did quite well out of selling our company to Oracle, so I'm happy to give back, but generally there needs to be a market for the product. So you can have the best idea in the world, but unless there's some way to monetize it, then that's going to be challenging. So you need to be able to describe what is that market opportunity. Then, assuming there is a market opportunity, what's the business model? So in the long term, how do we monetize? I do love the scene in the movie The Social Network where Sean Parker is saying to the guys, look, you don't want to go monetization too early, because if it's something like Facebook, you don't want to spoil the party too early. And that's valid, but at some point there needs to be a way of monetizing what it is that you're doing. And certainly if you get 1 billion people on your platform, then there'll be a way to monetize it. But for most inventions, that's not the case. So you need to have a way of extracting value from the value chain. I do like to see a view of competition, and a lot of people think that there is no competition for their product, which may be the case, but if nothing else, the competition is do nothing. And actually it's better if there is some competition, than it actually shows there's a market for your invention or for your idea to take out there. And if you can describe it in terms of a couple of axes. This is not dissimilar to, say, for example, a Gartner Magic Quadrant, where they look at completeness of vision versus ability to execute. But whatever the two axes are, you need to be able to describe your product in a way that's differentiated from the competition, and ideally differentiated in a way that you can protect with IP. You need to have some view of how you're going to scale. So what's the growth strategy? And this could be just over a few months, could be over a few years. In the modern internet world, things move pretty fast. So often investors want to see that described in terms of the next 3, 6, 12 months. Personally, I like to see kind of 1 to 5 years in this model, but that will vary depending on your product. Once you have that, then some sort of timeline and action plan. So what are the things that you need to achieve? What are the goalposts you need to hit? Which you can then report back to the investors and say, well, we achieved our minimum viable product in February. We got some feedback from users in March. We took it out to the market by December. And going alongside that is the growth model. So ideally, you put this in terms of fiscal years, can be calendar years. For me, I like fiscal years from whatever the zero date is, just to see, well, how's the revenue going to grow, and how's the profit going to grow over time. And it's not abnormal for it not to be profitable for the first bit, but obviously at some point, the business needs to be profitable and actually stand on its own feet. That just flows through into the financials, and it can be a good idea to also think about valuation here. Valuation is really tricky for a raw startup. It's always a bit of judgment on both sides as to the valuation of the company. But once you have revenue, once you have profit, then you can measure that and you can attach a value to that. People generally like to know who you are. So not only you, but the people behind you. And that could include investors. So quite often the point of the investing is not just to give money, but it's also to provide experience to you as the entrepreneur. So I think it's a good idea to introduce who the people are that are going to really define the success or failure of the operation. I definitely like to see how the funds are going to be used. Now the breakdown can vary, but these are the typical areas. Product development, clearly, particularly for a new invention. Sales and marketing is the other big one. How are you going to take it to market? You can do that digitally, but it's difficult. And how are you going to engage your prospective customers or end users if it's a consumer-facing product? It's good to keep operational costs as low as you can in the early days. A lot of investors like to see sweat equity. I do think that people need to live, so you need to be able to feed yourself. But just have a think about, well, where actually is the funding going to go? Where are you going to get the most value out of the investment that you get from your investors? And then you just conclude with a summary. Thank people for coming. It can be good to have a call to action here to say, well, okay, I'm going to follow up with you, or can you follow up with me, etc. So very quick summary there of some of my views on pitching to investors. I do believe in Australian innovation. I think Australia is extremely innovative, but I do see a lot of people who struggle with these sort of commercial sides of it. Feel free to reach out to me, any entrepreneur who's out there who wants some help navigating this world. Thanks, guys.